I actually think it's abusive. I think a parent who speaks about inappropriate things to a child, which will horrify the child or distress the child, I think it's not only inappropriate, I think it is abusive.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's parenting skills have come under the microscope at the Invictus Games for good reason, with the Duke giving this truly bizarre interview, casting doubt on whether he even enjoys being a dad.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I think 1 or 2 kids is probably enough. I definitely think that. I know lots of people who've got 3, 4. I know some people have got 5. I just say, well, that's your own fault. Having kids is amazing, but it's a journey. Every single day, every single week they just grow and they change. And I love the questions that they ask, and the experiences and the challenges they give you. It's great.
Now, Lady Colin Campbell is with me now. Lady C, I found that interview really sad, actually, because, yeah, he's trying to say it's great, but actually you can really tell that he is struggling with being a dad, horrified at the concept of having more than 1 child. Well, he has 2, of course. And during these Invictus Games, we really did see how both of these guys are not natural with children. We'll come to Meghan in just a moment, but what was your reaction to hearing Harry talk about being a dad in that sort of negative way? I mean, he almost looks a little bit depressed to me.
Oh, I think he is depressed. But I actually have always thought that Harry was pretty good with children. I mean, Harry and William used to play with my boys, who are a decade younger than they are, at polo. And both Harry and William were great with them. And my experience of Harry is that he's good with children. And also, I've seen Harry in other situations with children. But of course, playing with somebody for 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours is one thing. But having the responsibility of the welfare of a child for its life is another thing altogether. And what I found interesting above all are my kids.
They're your boys. They're a lot older than that now, but they still look just as good.
That's us at the Chateau de l'Alguerrier, the place we had in the south of France. They went to school in France, my boys. So they speak French as if they were French. In fact, 1 or 2 people have said, how come they have a French accent? I don't think they have a French accent, but they do have an overlay. But anyway, no, I think that Harry is daunted by responsibility. And I think he is depressed. I think he really suffers, emotionally. And I think it's very difficult being married to somebody who is a succubus. And Meghan is a succubus, and she's a leech, and she sucks the blood out of people and out of him.
And I mean, Lady C, can I just interrupt and point out this video to you? Because she was so desperate during her time at Invictus to show, not just to the world, but I think to Harry, that she is good with kids. And unfortunately, all of her efforts were very awkward, very stunted. It certainly fits with all of my reporting, which is that she's not a hands-on mum. She very much struggles with her children. And of course, we have discussed many times before that we don't actually know the origin of the children. But let's put that to one side. There does seem to be a real disconnect when it comes to Meghan and children.
Well, do you remember, Dan, that photograph, that clip of her with Archie when he was a baby? And he's saying Dada because he's looking to his father, and Meghan is saying, oh yes, and oh Danny, and flipping it around, and she practically grabs the child if not literally, figuratively, by its head and sort of, you know. I mean, you can see she's not good with children. But very demanding, controlling, dominating people are not good with children, because you need to have a certain amount of fluidity and flexibility to be good with children. Children recoil from too much control and being overridden, and Meghan overrides everybody. So, but what concerned me about Harry's comments with that person was when he went on and on about his mother and the landmines, and how he's bringing his children up to understand that their grandmother was a heroine, and that landmines, her landmine legacy. Diana, at the time, got a whole heap of flack from the government because there was an international agreement that was being reached all over the world, international meaning literally international. And Diana nearly derailed it with her landmine phantasmagoria. And I wrote about this at the time. I'm pretty sure I even wrote about it in The Real Diana, my posthumous biography of Diana. Diana was no heroine where the landmines were concerned. She jumped on a bandwagon that she knew was assured of success, and she nearly derailed things. The government at the time actually had to inform her that she was to stop doing what she was doing, because she was endangering the treaty that all the governments were trying to reach. So Harry going on and on about what a wonderful accomplishment Diana made. It was a fabulous accomplishment in terms of the public and the press thinking how wonderful she was. But I can tell you something, in reality, it was the height of opportunistic self-advertisement. That's really what it was.
Well, look, Lady C, I think it is worth I think it's worth us taking a look again at that interview that you referred to. It's the same interview. It's a different part of it. There's a couple of parts of this, I think, that are worth looking at. But personally, I found it quite shocking that he is talking about a 5-year-old child in regards to IEDs, which blow someone up. Again, it really showed to me that he's not all there at the moment. But have a look.
Which I will never do. Or you engage in the conversation and you try to explain things, but then it does. I mean, you know, Archie was talking about, as I said earlier, Archie was asking about landmines. I was talking about how some of these guys were blowing up. I think IEDs, improvised explosive devices, is probably a bit too much at this stage. But I found myself talking to him about mines. He's 5 years old. And interestingly, it gave me a chance to talk about my mum, his grandma, which I didn't even really consider. So that became the outcome of the story for him, which is he then saw videos, he wanted to see videos and photographs of his grandma Diana out doing her thing for landmines all those years ago. So it produced a very interesting...
I mean, Lady C, look, if he were talking about a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old, that would make a lot of sense. But he's talking about a 5-year-old. So this is something Harry is doing for himself, not Prince Archie, because if he actually gave a damn about Prince Archie tapping into his heritage, he wouldn't be keeping him apart from King Charles for so long, would he?
No, and I actually think it's abusive. I think a parent who speaks about inappropriate things to a child, which will horrify the child or distress the child, I think it's not only inappropriate, I think it is abusive. There is such a thing as a maturation point, and no 5-year-old is capable of being able to absorb positively the horrors of warfare with landmines, etc. That's why movies that are particularly violent have a a cutoff point, and for Harry but of course, this is what Harry is saying to a journalist that he did. Did he actually do it? Or has he become very Meghannian? And is he now going to be, shall we say, inventing things to big himself up and make himself look better than he really is? That's the question.
Well, he certainly is living in an alternate universe, Lady C, because he, in another part of this interview, and again, it really is worth looking at, he was talking about his experience in Canada and about how wonderful it was that the paparazzi just didn't manage to track him down. But remember, the whole narrative previously that Harry has employed is that the reason they had to flee from Canada to Hollywood was because the paparazzi did track them down. So this guy can't ever get his story straight. But I'll get your reaction, but let's just watch first, Lady C. But first, sleep quality declines in people as early as 30. When you were young, your body was producing a good amount of sleep-regulating hormones. As you get older, your body's ability to produce those hormones decline, making it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. Now, I tried everything to help improve my sleep, right? Like not eating or working out 3 hours before bed, banning blue light devices, loads of unnatural products, but nothing has moved the needle like Evening Being by Verso. After 3 years of perfecting the formula, they created a melatonin-free drink with clinically studied, patented ingredients. It's formulated to calm an active mind, help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and improve deep and REM sleep, all without creating dependencies or causing morning grogginess. Now, I actually look forward to drinking Evening Being every night, not only because it helps me fall asleep faster without having to get up in the middle of the night, but I wake up easier too, and it tastes good. It's become my new nightcap. It's also great if you're vegan or on the keto diet. So click the link in the show description or head on over to evening.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code outspoken at checkout to save 15% on your first order. Try Evening Being tonight and wake up feeling refreshed tomorrow. That address, evening.ver.so/outspoken, and use the coupon code outspoken at checkout to save 15%. But now, back to the show.
In 2020, it was amazing for us to be able to be in Canada, Vancouver Island, with Archie, and be able to go for hikes and be in amongst the local town and feel protected by them. We were there for more than 6 weeks before anybody found out. We were bumping into people the whole time. Nobody told anybody. I guess they told other people, but yeah, there's not too much of a media or like a pop culture on Vancouver Island, which was quite
nice. There's a sense of respect here.
Well, it's also the reason we went to Vancouver Island was because there's no one running around chasing people with cameras there. So we did. It was a bit of a refuge.
What do you make of it? Totally changed story.
Not only has he totally changed the story, Dan, but let's remember, this was a run-up to COVID. And remember, this was a run-up to COVID. And people were actually pretty much keeping themselves to themselves. And he's now saying that they were for the first 6 weeks out and about. That's not true. My aunt owned 2 houses on Vancouver Island. I know people on Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island, I actually have cousins who live on Vancouver Island. I mean, I've never heard such claptrap in my life. And Harry wants the world to believe this. And also, we're now to believe this latest narrative, which doesn't accord with the previous one. Well, which version of the truth is the truth and which one is a lie? Or are they both lies?
Well, what's fascinating...
Ayahuasca.
Also, it's like, are we really meant to believe given what soon emerged back then, Lady C, that it wasn't leaked via Hollywood anyway, because of course David Foster, the music producer who's married to Catherine McPhee, soon swept in to confirm that it was him who had lent him the mansion. And look, I know the ins and outs of this particular story are unimportant, but what is important is actual proof, Lady C, that Harry cannot tell the truth anymore about anything. He is so now consumed by lies, so confused by the own web of lies that he has created. And look, we know Meghan is a liar. She's always been a liar. She's lied about everything. But Harry is now a pathological liar.
Yes, he is, without a doubt. He's adopted many of her traits and habits. And, you know, also, let's face that both Harry and Meghan display not only seriously disturbing and disturbed aspects to their personality, but going off their admissions with their involvement with drugs, their behavior leads one to conclude that they fly higher than the highest kite will fly. It's all, you know, when you're dealing with people who are drug-addled or who, shall we say, emulate the conduct of the drug-addled, you're dealing with people who 1 minute it's one thing, the next minute it's another. The truth is of no significance to them. It's their truth. It's how they can use their feelings and their latest version of a story to achieve their objective, which whatever their objective is. That's what this is all about. It's a game that anybody who is familiar with the 12-step program actually knows only too well. It's boring, it's Yawnsville, it's predictable. The people who don't know what's going on will think, oh, you know, this is out of left field. It's not. It's in their apparent unpredictability, they are extremely predictable and, quite frankly, very tiresome with it as well. Because, but the belief, anybody who is delusional enough to believe that today you're going to believe that I'm a rocket scientist, and tomorrow you're going to believe that I am a nun, and the following day you're going to believe that I am a Madame Claude girl, and the following day you're going to believe that I am a goddess. And they do a version of that. It's one fantastical claim and stupidity after another. Don't you think?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. But people really see through it now. And what was also really interesting this week, Lady C, and I think, can we just look at the Invictus Games now on a macro level? Because the view certainly across social media is that actually Harry and Meghan have now destroyed the games. And there was specifically reporting in the Daily Mail that actually came from people within Invictus saying that actually that swipe that Harry made at President Trump and the fact that they continuously inserted themselves into the spotlight is now a distraction. It has overshadowed the veterans who should be at the heart of it all. They say they've gone woke. And these are really senior people working within Invictus saying, while we remain committed to supporting the veterans and their family, there is growing frustration over how Harry and Meghan have dominated the narrative. Public sentiment, especially among veterans, reflects this frustration. Most do not respect how they continuously insert themselves as victims in the narrative. So, Lady C, I decided to run a poll in my YouTube community. We've had honestly, tens of thousands of votes, Lady C. I mean, well over 30,000 votes already. The question, how do you rate Meghan Markle's Invictus Games appearance in 2025? 2% gave her an A and said she was an asset. 6% gave her a B, said annoying but harmless. 25% rated her C, made it all about her. 68% said D, she is destroying the event. So on a macro level, do you agree with this claim that Harry and Meghan are now actually destroying Invictus, which really was one of Harry's only genuine legacies?
Oh, I totally agree with it, Dan. I actually was saying this last year, or was it year before last, whenever Dusseldorf was. When was Dusseldorf? Must have been last year, wasn't it? Or year before last. Whenever Dusseldorf was. I've been saying this since Dusseldorf. And I know people in the army, and I know people who in the charity world. And this is not a recent concern. This is an ever-growing concern. And basically, Invictus has one of two choices. They either get rid of Harry as the patron, or they keep Harry as the patron, and ultimately, Invictus is going to shrivel on the vine and die. It's that really is, it seems to be as extreme as that. I think the whole thing is very unfortunate because, ironically enough, Harry on his own, without Meghan's interference, would have been perfectly okay. But she is the one who, well, she's a publicity whore, and people are sick and tired of her advertising her wares. It's as simple as that. And I know that the veterans from last year, the veterans in the, or whenever Dusseldorf was, they were busy complaining, the veterans and their families as well. And the mere fact that this has now reached the level where the Daily Mail is able to report on it is very ominous. But, you know, the reality is the Invictus Games were created as an offshoot, and people say it was inspired by the Warrior Games. The Warrior Games were inspired by the Paralympics, which were inspired by the Stoke Mandeville Games. I can't remember the name. He was a German doctor. He was a German Jew who came over here and during the war did fabulous work with spinal injuries, etc. And he is the one who came up with the idea and created originally the Stoke Mandeville Games, where the veterans would compete with each other, the injured veterans. And so ultimately, do we need Invictus at all? And I would say that if it continues at the rate it's going to die a natural death, because nobody associated with Invictus has the courage to say we should pull the plug on having Harry as the patron. If they had Mike Tyndall and Zara Phillips as the joint patrons, that would be a different matter altogether. I think that would breathe some life into it. And if they had, you know, people who were popular and respectable involved, but to have Harry and his scrubber, thanks, but no thanks.
Now, Lady C, speaking of the Daily Mail, I'm going to read you my favourite story of the week, and then I look forward to your reaction. I have to give credit to Richard Eden, the diary editor of the Mail, who has done some very good work on this one. Omid Scobie's new humiliation. Meghan and Harry's cheerleaders company meets a very undignified end. Richard Eden reveals all. Let's dive into this. He's been obliged to watch powerless as his favourite couple have been subjected to a fearful pummeling in print, which included being labelled the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet by a Montecito neighbour. But as Omid Scobie digests Vanity Fair's profile of Prince Harry, lost, out of his depth and naive, and Meghan, working for whom is alleged to have caused some former staff members to undergo long-term therapy, might he have difficulties of his own to contend with? I ask, Richard Eden says, because Scobie's company, Me has been closed down after being on the receiving end of a compulsory strike-off notice in December. Seemingly indifferent to that warning, Scobie, who recently moved to California so that he's now, it's said, approximately 2 hours drive from Harry and Meghan, took no action. In consequence, Me which Scobie established in 2016 and of which he has always been the sole director, has been dissolved. This means that it ceases to have a legal owner, with the result that its bank account is frozen and any assets are passed to the Crown. It is a peculiar fate for an author who has had an intense, if changeable, relationship with the royal family. Back in 2020, he described the reporting of the monarchy as celebratory, adding that he'd challenge anyone to find a negative story he had written about the Windsors. 3 years later, he struck a much less celebratory note, saying it was important to write a full story without fear or favour, regardless of the consequences. While always a tireless cheerleader for Meghan and by association for Harry, Scobie appears to have taken a splendidly aristocratic attitude to niceties such as paperwork required by Companies House. December's compulsory strike-off notice was the fourth issued against Me. Back in 2022, the company dodged being shut down by filing 3 sets of annual accounts in a single day in April that year. That may, of course, simply be because Scobie can appear ill at ease with numbers, even the number of birthdays he's celebrated. In 2020, he assured an interviewer that he was 33. In fact, he was 38. Now 43, and these are my words, looking weirder and weirder by the day. He declines to comment on the fate of Me, but I can disclose, this is Richard Eden, that the Crown's treasure chest is not about to swell. The company had just £359 in its coffers when Scobie was troubled to file its account. Lady C, what do you think?
2 tears left eye, Dan. 2 tears left eye. poor Omid Scobie's. Well, you know, as the Jamaicans say, you spit in the sky, it will fall in your eye. I mean, he says he was being celebratory about the royals and never wrote anything negative. Is he not the person who managed to, by chicanery, leak the accusation that the King and Catherine were both racists?
Oh, he was. Oh, yes, he was.
And also, you know, since he's moved to California, you notice his access to Megsy Baby and H has pretty much dried up. Maybe it dried up along with his association with Marcus Anderson, because, you know, they've said very interesting things about him and Marcus Anderson over the years. So I leave it at that, because he, of course, denies that the stories about him and Marcus Anderson were true. But I neither know nor care what people like that do with themselves. I couldn't care less. But I do care what he does with other people. And I think never was failure more richly deserved. And it's wonderful that he's getting his just desserts. And I actually think Richard Eden's done a very good job. And rather witty too, don't you think?
He has. I thought it was very much worth sharing that reportage from Richard Eden today. Indeed, I don't always agree with everything he says or writes, but on Omid Scobie, he has been spot on, as have you. You've got to go and follow Lady Colin Campbell's YouTube channel. Much, much more analysis of what was really going on at the Invictus Games. But Lady C, you know, I always love having you on Outspoken, and we will speak very soon. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.